Welcome to the podcast, Richard. I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Lizzie, and me too. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all my guests. What is your money story?
Yeah, drum roll. Hey, I've listened to a few of these episodes. It's really interesting how people, start off that the answer to that question. And I guess I'm going to start by quoting Steve Jobs, and it's you can only really join the dots looking backwards. Um, if and possibly people haven't got the video version, but I've got a few grey hairs, let's say, which might belie my age a little bit. I say at the moment I'm probably entering in my final third of this time on this planet, and obviously God willing or whatever, that I hope that bears out. But so if I look at where I am today, and then maybe try and piece it together, that's it. So I guess from a money point of view, um, most of that most of the time on this earth, I haven't had any. I actually haven't had any. In fact, I've had less than none for quite a large part of it. And this was significantly impacted me in many different ways. So I'm fortunate now. I'm blessed now. We've got some assets. We've got some money. We're able to have some choices in life. Um, it's not been a straight road.
Mm.
It's been a long and winding road, and it's been an up and down road, and sometimes we've slammed it in reverse occasionally as well. So I tried to make sense of it, kind of looking backwards, and that's the point, because at various points in time in my life, I wasn't really aware of what was going on, with money, particularly. There wasn't a lot of financial education, for example. Well, definitely none at school.
Mm.
No real talk of there was only one thing at home I significantly remember from a money point of view that was kind of a big deal. Is my father took out an insurance policy, with a savings plan as it was
Yeah.
in those days, and when I was 16, this thing matured, and there was this check, and it wasn't a very large check, but it was a check that he'd been saving for me, and he started when I was a baby. And I remember the conversation I had with my dad at that time, which was, I want to buy a motorbike. I want to buy a motorbike so I can be independent. And he was like, absolutely no way you spending this money on a motorbike. So I couldn't, and I suppose that really, stuck with me as a significant memory, because there was two things. One is, money literally fell into my lap. I didn't know anything about it, and had a few £100 check or something. Um, I had a dream of what I wanted to do with it. But it didn't last very long, but I had a dream that I wanted to do with it. And that dream was to give me freedom, independence, mobility. That's the point. See, the money itself wasn't the factor, is what it could do for me. And then I was denied it. So, my dad he had good intentions, obviously. He wanted me to save it and
Yeah.
put it to good use, etc. But to be honest with you, it wasn't that much money, but possibly I might have done myself a big injury if I'd have bought that motorcycle and run around. But anyway, so that was then. Then kind of just I went to university, and I know not I was the first in my family to go to university. So funny enough, I heard is it Jeremy, one of your recent guests, say,
Yeah.
like, I think he said something like everybody goes to university. I'm like, well, when I was young, not everybody did go to university.
Same for me. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, and I was definitely the first in our family to go to university, and that was a big deal. And it was the days when you could get a full grant as well, for living expenses as well as free tuition. So yes, privilege there. But I left university with a heap of debt, overdrafts and stuff like that. Let's not ask me how I managed that. Um,
I can imagine.
yeah, but the bar and the sports clubs probably feature quite heavily. So I didn't manage my money very well. I had a good time. And but then the thing is that left me then with basically debt. So I left university with debt, and I carried on, overspending. So it was a pattern, and so that carried on into my forties. Literally, I would have credit cards, I would have personal loans and stuff like that. I would have consumer debt to fund lifestyle.
Mm.
And and didn't really have a lot of the more positive things that I'm more aware of now, for money and stuff. So it took a long time to really break through there. And the whole concept, I know in your intro, you talk about money mindset.
Yeah.
I had no clue what that,
Mm.
no, none at all. No financial education, no financial mindset, or, money archetypes, or any of that sort of stuff. Didn't know. That was a fairly recent breakthrough for me to even understand that. But joining the dots, looking backwards, if I say my money archetypes, I know there's different ones, different flavors you can do
Yeah.
tests on, but mine are, and you might smile if you recognize these particular archetypes: the magician,
Yeah.
the warrior, and the fool.
That's a
So,
good combination, to be honest with you.
is it? Is it?
Yeah. It's important to have the fool. Some people, when they see they have fool on there, they get a bit concerned. But the fool is the archetype that has fun. You have to balance that out, absolutely. But the perfect combination is warrior, magician, a little bit of creator artist, because you want your warrior to be driving the car. You want your magician to be the one with the map or sat nav now. And you want your creator artist in the back of the car controlling the mood music with a little bit of fool mixed in there. So that's not a bad combination.
Well, thank you. Well, I can't remember the actual creator artist score, but I think those are the top three. But it's funny because I remember the fool coming to the fore occasionally. If you you having a little bit of fun, great.
Yeah,
Having too much fun, not so good, right?
absolutely.
So I think I do really well. I mean, I'd literally find money in the street. I did it. I did it the other day. I found a pound. I was charging my car, and I just looked. That's what I do. I look at my feet. I don't know why. I was looking at my feet. And I found a pound and charged my car. So that was the money I found. I found a wad of cash when I was a teenager, at a petrol station. It's just weird. I find money. And that idea of finding money, not always in the street, has stuck with me. That's the magician. And then the warrior. And I think the warrior is one I've like really honed over. That was my interpretation of that is, getting good at doing deals, getting good at understanding commercial structures, understanding finance. I worked in business to business finance, although my personal finances were absolutely rotten. I understood financial principles from my career that I had there. And eventually I had what I call my eureka moment. I wasn't naked in the bath, but I was in a beer pub garden one Friday evening. Don't tell my former bosses.
I
I
promise.
might have skived off a little bit early, and I was literally doodling on a napkin. I was on my own. I was doodling on a napkin, and this is the how I was at that time, and I was modelling the compound growth effect of a property portfolio, and it was just there, and it was my eureka moment. It was like I could be a millionaire, Rodney. It was that, and that wasn't until so. This is personal finance. See, I had a good professional career, but personal finance, nothing was really happening, and that was in the mid noughties.
Mhm.
So I was in my 40s at that point. And another 4 years later, I bought my first property, and I actually bought three in the first year. And I realized I didn't know anything. When I started, I didn't know anything. I thought I'd take 4 years to educate myself. But in the first year, I actually bought properties. I bought three in the first year and I only had £10,000, which wasn't enough for even one deposit. So that made me rethink everything. So I then started to turn, the magician, the warrior thing combined, and I grew a property portfolio, and I've had some property businesses and other businesses, but I think also just to maybe shut up with this story a little bit and let you come back on, Leslie, is I've also unlocked what I think is my purpose, and that is to share my knowledge. So what I've learned, albeit later in life, and I went through some pretty rocky times actually. Divorce with no money and stuff like that. It was, it's not. It is a bit of a turnaround story. But I sort of had this education. I taught myself. I was very much into personal development growth in a number of different areas, and kind of came good, if you like. But I love to share with other people, and I
Yeah.
think that's part of my purpose. Where I'm here, sharing my knowledge, and when maybe that third is a third or whatever I'm allowed is expired, I'm hoping to share in a different way with a legacy. after I've departed. So
Yeah.
that's it.
And that's amazing. That is amazing, because as you were talking there, I was going to ask you, what was the catalyst for that change? And I am going to ask that question, but it's more what you said with regards to finding your purpose a little bit later in life. Do you think that finding your purpose, in order to do that, you had to go through those harder times that led you to where you are now? And perhaps if you hadn't have gone through those harder times, you would have carried on just doing what you were doing, not necessarily having the impact that you wanted to, but you had to go through that in order to get to the point that you are at now, where you have your purpose, you're creating that legacy, but also you have a desire to want other people to learn from your journey.
Couldn't put it any better. I think, without a doubt. How could I possibly, have the pretense to think I could give anything to anyone unless I've had that experience. I've had I've earned those stripes,
Yeah.
been through those battles, got those scars. If everything just goes so swimmingly well in life, you're not really prepared for life, because life isn't all ups. Yeah, there's lots of downs. And I also, we talk about financial stewardship as a concept, don't want to get too biblical or anything, because I'm not massively, into the Bible, but you won't be given larger sums if you're not very good at managing smaller sums in general. So I had to kind of learn how to handle money. I had to learn to handle increasing sums of money. I didn't always handle it that well. And so I had these bumps, but they taught me lessons. But now I believe, I can share that. But I will tell you something about purpose, because I think, yes, I came to it late in life, but there were clues before. So when I was 18, I said, I'm going to write a book. Well, it took me 30 years to write that first book. Um, but I did, and I've written a couple since. So that was one thing. I just didn't know what the book was going to be about. But I just had this dream, actually. I was going to write a book. Then, sort of during my 20s and 30s, my professional career, and early, into my 40s, people used to come seek me out for advice. And I was like, why? Just randomly. I wasn't, it wasn't because I was a manager, somebody who had that authority. People just came to me and talked to me and asked my advice on stuff. I was like, this is interesting. And so mentoring is a big part of what I do, but I was naturally mentoring before I knew what the word meant. So that was another part. So the sharing the knowledge and the mentoring part, the writing the book and the mentoring part was all there. And then I'll kid you not, I have to be careful how I say this, because you might think I'm a bit strange, but I got it wasn't voices in my head, but I just had this, it's hard to explain, this sensation, this energy, this feeling that I was going to have. My purpose after I left this earth was to leave this legacy. And, it was a legacy to support, causes and people in need. And that's always been my heart anyway. But when I got this sort of message, I literally thought it was a joke. I was like, if there's anyone out there, if you're trying to give me this as telling me I'm going to do this, you're having a laugh, because I was broke. I was in debt. My outgoings were way above my income. My pension was shot, and I was like, is this a joke? And it literally stuck with me for about 20 years. And it's still there now. It just will not leave me alone. So what I'm trying to say is there are some clues. And I think you just have to tune into them, perhaps, and maybe push on I'm pushing on. I was like, this joke of like, okay, I'm just going to keep going, and have a setback, and you think, it's not really real. No, I'm going to keep going again, and just keep going. So I don't know if that's interesting, but again, Steve Jobs, he said it well. You can only really join the dots looking backwards, and I think that's true.
Oh, I think that's really, really true. So do you think the message that you received from whoever, whatever you received it from, do you think that has been a real driving force for you in almost subconsciously trying to create the mechanism that was going to allow you to create a legacy.
Undoubtedly, absolutely, undoubtedly. It makes me get up when I fall over. It makes me keep going. It makes me try again. It makes me try harder. It makes me try and get better. And it's not a selfish interest, you know. This is a selfless interest, in fact. So the way it's scoped out is that our family legacy will be a certain value. We might need to inflation link that, but especially in recent times. But that
Absolutely.
will be a certain financial level. We've got three adult daughters, and we want to look after them, but we don't want to ruin them.
Yeah.
I can put it that way. I'm sure they'll be good at it, but but anything above a certain level is to go into this legacy fund, and it really drives me. And to be honest with you, I'm at the age now and a stage in life now, and probably asset level, income level, whatever you want to call it, that I have choices and I don't have to press as hard. And yet I'm pressing harder. I'm pressing harder. So yeah, and I think it's that driving force, it's that legacy goal. It's not, and again, I feel it's not for me. I'm less interested in material things these days. And I'm more interested in, what we can do, how big we can make this thing. Even though, I mean, Warren Buffett started when he was about a teenager. I'm playing a bit of catch up, so I'm not going to get to his level probably because I'm starting much later. But I'm going to have a go in my own little way.
And what is it, do you think, that is driving you? As you've said, you have choices, you have the freedom to make those choices. And if you wanted to essentially sit back and not to drive harder, yet you are driving harder. And I see that trait in lots of wealthy people who want to do good, who have that spirit of, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. What's the word where you give?
What, what,
Oh,
what
cannot think.
philanthropy? No.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Is it?
So
Okay.
yeah, that's exactly that. But they have that drive to really want to make a difference in the world, to really have the finances to create real meaningful change. What is it that drives you to want to be like that?
Yeah, I think, well, I guess from an outsider's point of view, looking in, if people looked at my family background, yeah, first to university, but my dad had small businesses. He was like, the corner shopkeeper. He had a news agency, and that went really well. But then he ventured. He co-invested in the hairdressers, and he had a sandwich shop, and they were like that kind of business, and those others didn't go so well. And it was an insurance agent. So you might pitch that, middle class or something. But I always say I was working class because I had no money. I was like always worked. In fact, I had a massive work ethic. I, in a broken home, things like that. So I feel I come from a disadvantaged background, believe it or not. I felt that painfully when I was younger, but I have a heart for anybody who's come from a disadvantaged
Mm.
background. And of course, there's a lot of people who've had much more disadvantage than I've had, and I really feel for them. And I think what really makes me tick is if I can help someone individually, that I know their story, I know their circumstances, and we can help them tangibly make a difference. It doesn't have to be large sums sometimes or a big thing, but just to help. And I just I get emotional about it. I think
Yeah.
so. That's that. And I didn't have money. I had to work really hard for everything I kind of had or got or whatever myself. So I have this strong work ethic as well. Didn't kind of get the whole financial, a different world of finance, which is investing, and business, personal business. I did go into business and did okay, but didn't do stellar well. And then I've had a second go at that more recently. So I think it's this drive to help the underdog and the disadvantaged. And I get choked up. It's hard for me in Brazil. I go back and in Rio recently, where we've got a base. There's a lot of homelessness on the
Mm.
streets, and I've done it several times, and I don't say, so it's a bit awkward perhaps to say some of the things I might say because I don't want it to come over in the wrong way. But I'll often see someone. I saw a mother with three kids around her the other day when I was there. I just went to a shop and I bought loads, I just bought some stuff and I gave it to her. And it's like, how, hopefully she's got a meal for the family. But of course, that's feeding a person for a day, maybe. So it'd be nice to think that you can, do something more sustainable. So what I'm trying to do with my legacy is it's more sustainable. So it can maybe feed more than one day, or teach people to feed themselves, or teach people, other types of things. So that really stirs me up. I don't know if that answers your question well enough.
Oh no, it does absolutely. I've had this thing for a long time about encouraging everybody to be 5% kinder, because if we're all 5% kinder, when you think of that accumulation, how big an effect that could have, particularly I think in an environment that we're in at the moment, where there is a lot of hostility, there is a lot of negativity, and people are not as nice to each other as they should and could be. That I think that simple act of going out and buying a meal, a bag of shopping for somebody, if everybody did what they could towards that, that not only helps that person, but I'm sure it had a ripple effect as well, that she was able to invite a neighbor over to share that meal with them. The smile on the children's faces because they had full tummies, whatever it might be. And I think to be able to create just that ripple effect where a person allows other people to feel happier in that moment creates a bigger ripple effect. I think that is the kind of legacy I wish everybody would move towards, because we would live in a far nicer world than we do right now. So I think that was a perfect example to share. So for you, what is it like having lived in the UK for a large part of your life to now be living in Brazil?
Yeah. So I always say, I mean, I didn't live abroad until I was, I have to check all of them, until I was, nearly 50. And so let's call it 50, right? The first 50 years lived in Britain mostly, just went on holiday to other places. I didn't even manage to do my sort of summer camps that I wanted to do when I was at university. That all got, I had to work in the UK and stuff like that. So I never had that experience, that lived experience of just holidayed and not that even that far away. So when I moved to Brazil, it was 10 years ago actually. So um, it was a massive culture shock for a start. And language is definitely not one of my gifts. So that was hard. But let's just let's just say that most of the Brazilians that I meet, they call me Brudioca in Rio. So a carioca is from Rio de Janeiro, but they call me Brudioca, which is their term of endearment to say we're embracing you. You are like one of us, and that is the highest compliment because I try to take part in the culture. I try to enjoy that, and so I love the country, but what I was going on to say is once you've lived abroad, I don't know if you have, but if you've lived abroad, you're then from anywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
changes you. It changes your outlook, and it changes you for the better because suddenly I'm then a foreigner or an immigrant or whatever you want to call it in a different place, and then you perhaps see how it could be that in your home country towards other people who are in that position, and it really opened my eyes to prejudice and things like that much more clearly, just having that lived experience myself. But I love Brazil. I love Rio. I love the people of Brazil. I've adopted football teams. I've adopted the music, and I've got a wife who is also Brazilian, so that's also nice. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I haven't lived abroad. I've worked abroad and therefore spent big chunks of time, be it 6 months in Japan or going on 12 months in Switzerland. We had a place in Switzerland, but we'd go there for pockets of holiday. But even that extension of time rather than just holidays, you're right, you do get to appreciate and to compare and contrast in a positive way as well as a negative way the differences, and you do get an insight into there are differences between cultures. It doesn't just come down to the color of your skin or the type of food that you eat or the religion that you follow. And I'll give a really good example of this. Because of our other business, we spend a lot of time working with the French. And I will often say to people, at our narrowest point, I think there's 21 miles between Britain and France. But yet you will not come across such culturally different people very often than you will the French and the British. And you have to understand how a French person operates in the same way a French person needs to understand the cultural differences to really appreciate how different we can be. And having that lived experience for you, actually living in Brazil, must be a real fascinating insight into anthropology that most of us don't really get to experience.
Yeah, I agree. It's weird. There's like a honeymoon period. The first 6 months, I was like a tourist on an extended visa. I was doing everything, going everywhere. Everything was, first time sampling things, and it was just a great adventure. And then after that, you then start to live more like the locals, if you integrate.
Yeah.
And obviously I tried to integrate, language permitting, but I did try and integrate. So yeah, sure. It's always going to be a big part of our lives. Brazil. And interestingly, I've been married twice. I think I probably gave a clue earlier. So obviously my wife is Brazilian, but my first wife was South African. So I had insight, even though I didn't. I actually we were going to relocate to South Africa at one point, but funny enough, I had the opportunity to start my own business in the UK, and that got shelved, so it didn't happen. But so there must have been something in me which was more outward looking,
Yeah.
to other sort of cultures, other countries. And I think, if we can just be a little bit more tolerant about different cultures, because we're all mixing now anyway, it's global. We've just got people from different countries, different cultures, religious backgrounds, etc.
Yeah.
Trying to coexist. So I think just trying to understand that.
I agree. No, totally agree. I'd like to take you back now to something you said right at the beginning of the conversation around, like me, a lack of financial education at school. For me, I am really motivated. My purpose, I have discovered, is to bring financial education right into the heart of where it needs to be within schools. And that is, that's my ambition that I am working on right now. What difference do you think it would have made for you if you had received financial education at school? And what would you have liked to have been taught that you weren't at school around financial education?
What good questions. Well, first of all, I heard about your ambitions, and congratulations to you. And I believe you're actually making some strides there. So, very well done for that. And I must admit, I wanted to ask you, and maybe that's a different conversation, but I wanted to
This
ask
is
you
my
how
podcast, remember?
this. Okay, yeah, cool.
Okay.
And so we'll spin it around.
I'm joking. I'm
I
joking.
know. But what I was going to say though is, I thought the syllabus would be a little bit restrictive in terms of what you can share at school. But anyway, it is a different topic. I didn't get anything. I think really basic money management would have been a good starting point. Principles of savings and maybe funding your lifestyle over the longer term. Maybe you could call that investing, saving and investing for the future, would have been really, really useful. But just some good old financial principles like compound growth and things like that would have been handy, because I'm a grandfather now. And so young Lucy, who's just come into the world, she's just approaching one. My daughter reached out to me the other day and she said, I'm thinking of getting Lucy a junior ISA. Do you think I should get a cash one, a stocks and shares one? And I was like, oh, this is amazing that you've even just thought about this.
Yeah.
And she's got a little bit of money. They're struggling, right now, but they got a little bit of money. They want to start it off. And then we started pouring into this. And then we worked out that, if it's I saw somebody else do a video, if you like, if you put £100 a month in, and by the way, all the family can contribute into the one we looked at. If you put £100 a month away, and then you just let it vest, at some point that's going to compound and grow, and it'll be 1 million when she's about, I think, 57. Yeah. But that's from not that much in contributions, about £24,000 or something. And I just thought it was brilliant. I thought those principles, if you can, and obviously my daughter's older, and we perhaps spoken about money in the house a bit more than happened in my generation. But Lucy now is going to have that for a start. But if she had that teaching herself at school, or Jess, my daughter, had it at school, it would stand her in good stead. So I just think, good old money management, good debt versus bad debt. Bad debt is consumer spending. I'd had a lot of that. Bad debt, and good debt is asset-backed, investing, like property, which is obviously what I know now. Those general principles that, that you could apply and take into your life, and would just probably help a lot of people provide for their future. I'm trying to avoid the word pensions, but it's one of the best investments you can actually have, frankly. And if you start early, it's cracking.
Yeah.
You don't have to work that hard for it, but just future investing, there's a few options available. And then saving and budgeting would be the other big ones. Probably at that age, I don't have to get my books out and go, well, here's an 85,000 word book on property financing. It's not like that, but it's just those basic principles, I would say.
Exactly. And I think it's sparking that interest. It is giving confidence in asking questions and getting children excited about taking charge of their lives sooner rather than later, and the impact that they can have in doing so. And I think I agree, you say the word pension, to certain children, and that's for old people, but actually we know how quickly time goes by. So the sooner you can appreciate the likes of compound interest, and you spoke, really well there about doing a savings ISA for Lucy. I had somebody on the podcast, Shah Wasmond, about 12 months ago, who did exactly that. Started saving for her son the minute that he was born. He's now 18. By the time he comes to retire, he'll have £1 million. And that's come from, not a huge amount having to be invested because of the magic of compound interest. And I always talk about compound interest in that terminology, the magic, because it just seems to happen, without us having to do anything in the background. It grows nicely as long as we're respecting it and regularly feeding money into it, or starting off with a nice size nest egg to begin with. And I think that for me is where we can make money and maths exciting for children, because you actually get them to realize you are actually taking control long before possibly you're able to drink, you're able to vote, you're able to get married. All of those things are seen as, you're an adult. Well, actually, as a child, you can take responsibility of your life far sooner. And for me, that is really, really empowering. And I think financial education at school is all about, empowering and being able to make those decisions, essentially. As far as what you are doing now is concerned, what really excites you and is motivating you to keep doing more of it?
Yeah, so I've I guess the main constituents, we're talking about working career and business and things like that, I guess, primarily. And some of the things I enjoy are not those. So I'm, I've been off the saddle, if you like, in terms of sharing my knowledge for a couple of years. I parked my podcast. I was writing for the Your Property Network magazine, and I think this year's a book year. There's a 3-year gap since the last one, so I think it's overdue. So that's been parked, but that's very much come back to the fore. I'm just going to relaunch and reset in that area there. I've just got new energy to do that. Just done a couple of podcasts like this now, and it's really got me back into the mood, into the spirit. I've mentored a few people recently. Well, it's more of a mastermind actually, but it doesn't really matter the terminology. It's sort of, trying to support people. I've really got energy out of that, and I think that's very, very important. So it's my purpose, but I also get energy from it. I've got business interests which are predominantly property related, so lettings agencies, for example. That I got to be honest with you, my role in it I need to change because talking about the flow or energy. I'm more of an outward facing person, strategy, business development, conceptualization, M&A, stuff like that. Tenants and toilets operations, not so much my bag. And I feel that friction. I can feel it. So I need to make a transition so that I'm doing less of the tenants and toilets part of property and more of the strategy M&A side of property from a business point of view. And then from property, whether that's, wealth building, portfolio building, either for myself or for others, because we're launching a property asset management business as well. Again, is something I want to put my energy into because I love doing deals. I love working with people. I love money and numbers actually. And so I think I've been rechanneling my direction of where I want to go for this year in particular. So it's something of just a refocus, maybe a 90-degree swing just to move out away from some of the things which were depleting a little bit and more into things that energize and can also, they're my skills, my strengths, they're what I enjoy and where I can make the biggest contribution as well, I think. So the sort of knowledge sharing, the businesses with the right role in those businesses, and then growing, helping others as well as me and my family and our legacy fund to grow as well. That's the future.
And isn't it nice to be able to think about your next steps, what you're going to do in the terms of what lights you up? And I think that is so important to be able to think about what lights you up as opposed to what you have to do. And I think to be able to think about what lights you up is a real privilege.
Totally agree. And, I think one of the messages, I've got probably a few mantras and messages and, whatever I try and relay to people, in trying to share. One of it is, be educated. So I'm sure we aligned on that one. But most of all, become an independent thinker. And to become an independent thinker, you have to take in a lot of knowledge, from a lot of different places, and then form your own opinion, your own judgment about what you want to do about that. It's got to be personal to you. But you can't be an independent thinker without having that broad outlook. And so, one of the things that changed my world really was education, whether it's formal education or more, in more recent times, personal development and growth and that sort of thing, reading. Charlie Tremendous Jones, one of my favorite quotes is, you could be the same person in 5 years, but for the books that you read and the people that you meet, so that would be it. So I am fortunate, but I've also invested, in myself so that I think I can hopefully, make a reasonable decision about what the future might look like. So I think you can't really, you don't have the awareness unless you've invested in that understanding, that knowledge, that growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How can people connect with you, Richard?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think probably the easiest thing is I don't know, you mentioned at any point, did I? But my alter ego is the property voice. And so if you just put that into most of the search engines, social media channels, etc., you'll probably find me. The property voice. So the propertyvoice.net is my website, and then you'll find variations of that on what is X now, rather what was Twitter and Instagram. But on LinkedIn, it's my own name, but I have to add some initials because it's quite a common name. So it's Richard W.J. Brown on LinkedIn. So find me, reach out, connect, and just say I heard you on this podcast, and we'll start a conversation. That'd be great.
Brilliant. And all those details will be in the show notes, so people will be easily able to connect with you. Thank you very much for your time today. I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you, and I appreciate you spending some time with me. Thank you.
What a pleasure, and what a great host you are. Thank you, Leslie.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.